It is one of the biggest days of the year for Texas high school sports, only coming every 2 years, but completely shaking up the sports landscape. It's like the New York Stock Exchange at the Birdville Fine Arts and Athletic Complex, UIL Realignment Day, coaches and ADs gathering to learn, one, who they will play in district for the next 2 years, and two, to build out those non-district schedules. We welcome you inside the studio. I'm Mike Leslie, Jonah Javad, Joe Trahan joining us here in a matter of moments. Gentlemen, it is one of our favorite days of the year because it gives us now a clear picture of what the schedules are going to look like, not just for football, but for basketball and volleyball and sports alike across the landscape as we get a picture of what all this will look like for the next 2 years. And there's a lot of changes up and down across the state. Gentlemen, good morning. What's your biggest takeaway as we have first looked at everything?
Well, mine's parochial, you guys. It's about what happened with Frisco. With, you know, we already knew this was going to happen, but still the ramifications of Frisco Wakeland being 6A. And I don't want to steal the thunder of some other big changes that we're, finding out in districts that are playing out. But I can go into that more later. But again, for those who live in my neck of the woods, it's very interesting, and it's caused an uproar here around town. We'll get into that later.
Jonah, how about you? You were there this morning to see the madness, and it's always a scene. What was it like this morning?
It was exactly the same as it was 2 years ago, Mike, and probably the same as it was 4 years before that. It never really gets old seeing all those people in one room, and when the districts drop, it is really like the stock exchange. Everybody's trying to find matches for non-district play. Got a chance to catch up with a lot of coaches today who we'll hear from here in a matter of moments as this show goes on. But I think obviously one of the big surprises, DeSoto going to 5A. The first time DeSoto's dropped in classification in decades, Mike. So I'm sure we'll get into that as this show unfolds.
Yeah, the headlines this morning are local state championship contenders moving up or moving down. We knew that Aledo was going to be moving up to 6A. The numbers came down in the fall that delineated that Aledo would move into 6A finally after several years of everybody thinking, when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? Now was that time. The question mark, though, was what district will they land in? Could have been with North Crowley, could have been with South Lake Carroll, could have been with a number of different potential landing spots. Let's show you District 3-6A. This is where the Aledo Bearcats land, in with all the Arlington 6A schools, Bowie, Houston High, Lamar, Martin, and Arlington High, Granbury and Weatherford also in that district as well. And I imagine that there are reactions to this across the state over the course of this morning because there was a very real possibility that they would have ended up with North Crowley and Crowley High and that district that was formulated the last go-round, fellas. And instead, they kind of will drive past North Crowley and some of these other schools to go play these Arlington schools. What do you think the reaction has been elsewhere across the state about where Aledo has landed in their first go-around in 6A?
I think Aledo is one of the real big winners in this biennial reclassification and realignment. Let's call it the Fort Worth hopscotch. Skip it over Fort Worth, right, to get to Arlington. And listen, there's quality schools in Arlington. Obviously, Arlington Martin has a long tradition. Arlington Bowie, of course, won the district last year. Good schools, one and all, but in terms of where Aledo could have ended up in terms of competition as well as travel, if they would have had to go further west, I mean, in terms of all of it, while there will be some travel involved for those Arlington schools and for Aledo, I think this is a really good spot, for the Bearcats to begin this 6A trek. They're set up, dare I say, for success.
Yeah, Jonah, what do you think about it? Because I do think there's probably a lot of people that went, really?
Yeah,
that's where Aledo lands in their first go-around in 6A?
I really just don't want to be disrespectful to the rest of the district.
No, of course.
I mean, by saying it's a bit of a cakewalk for Aledo, it's true. Or in theory, it should be, just based on the talent level and talent discrepancy. So I think it would be a surprise if Aledo isn't a district champion this year. And maybe there's something to that where now you move up to 6A and the expectation hasn't changed at all for the Bearcats this season.
The expectation was never going to change, especially right there in Parker County and in Aledo itself. There was never going to be anything but the expectation that they would keep winning, that they would continue their long district winning streak that dates back to 2007 and is now well over 130 consecutive games. All of that would have been expected to continue, whether they ended up with North Crowley and Crowley or South Lake Carroll or any of the above or not. But certainly now, knowing where they have fallen, that is definitely going to be the assumption, I think, across Texas high school football, and it will be a bigger surprise if it's not that way. I remember a few years back, this is probably going back 4 years if memory serves, the first time they moved from 5AD2 to 5AD1. And everybody's eyes got big when the screen flashed up, and holy smokes, Aledo and Denton Ryan are in the same district. That is huge, and everybody thought, hey, maybe that's going to be the time where the district winning streak ends. They went 4-0 against Denton Ryan when it mattered during the regular season. When it ultimately mattered in the playoffs, Denton Ryan did get them, but for the district winning streak, they kept it going each of the 4 times they played Denton Ryan. There were so many different ways this could have fallen, so many different places they could have gone, and several statewide contenders they could have been districted with, and they are not, at least this first go-round. The other big storyline is, of course, DeSoto going down from 6A to 5A. I've talked a lot with Claude Mathis about this over the course of the last couple of years since they made the decision 2 years ago to stay in 6A. They were the 2-time defending 6A Division II champions at the time. They had an enrollment where they could have dropped down to 5AD1. They elected not to 2 years ago. This time they do go where the numbers say they should be. They go into District 8-5A Division I. Cedar Hill, their rival from just down the road, also getting smaller correspondingly with DeSoto. They too drop down to the 5AD1 ranks. Midlothian, a really good program in that district. Mansfield Summit has been very good for a long time. Burleson Centennial has had moments where they've been strong over the course of the last couple of years. Lancaster, of course, another one dropping from 6A. Each of those 3, Cedar Hill, DeSoto, and Lancaster, were in a 6A district the last go-round. They all dropped down to 5A Division I, but obviously DeSoto, the reigning now 6A Division II state champs who have won 3 of the last 4 in 6AD2, now are a 5A Division I program, fellas. It seems like a mortal luck that they are certainly the favorite anyway to win 5AD1 each of the next 2 years, and it will be hard for someone to beat them at that level.
Yeah, I mean, you lean back on demonstrated ability with what Claude Mathis has built there, you know, and playing in that 6A Division II realm. And you know, he's figured out ways to win. They've come up with big victories along the way against, you know, some of the biggest schools in the state. And when you consider that drop down, and listen, to be perfectly clear about this whole thing, I don't begrudge them moving down at all, right? Because, you know, Claude Mathis knows better than all of us, you know, in terms of reading the tea leaves, with the talent level he's got, with the kids he's getting in. He's traditionally gotten great athletes. They've been fun to watch, and they've been a state power. But this thing is part of evolution, and that's why I remember when I first came here, you guys, 20 some odd years ago, and I was like, why on earth do they do this every 2 years? I mean, it's this big upheaval, and you know, it feels like we're starting over every 2 years. Yeah. Is this really good? Well, man, just live in Frisco for 5 years, okay? And you can see the evolution of these schools and the way that, you know, the kids that they come in changes. And listen, there are some powerhouses that continue to just keep churning out state powers, and it keeps going and the beat goes on. But there's also small evolutions, if you will, with some of these programs. And I don't begrudge Claude going down at all, trying to find out, you know, how the talent matches up. And here's the silver lining. In 2 years, you know, if you deem that as perhaps not the right thing to do for your school, for your athletes, for the kids, most importantly, you can change it. And that's why I've completely come around in terms of, yeah, every 2 years, probably about right. Because this thing is hard to get right because there's so many different factors, and it needs to be about the best thing for the kids first and foremost. And I think that's part of it.
Jonah, what did you think of it?
Yeah, it certainly allows more evolution, right? I mean, as teams and programs change, it allows the UIL and districts to change with them. So yeah, I'm in full agreement. It is a bit crazy that it feels a bit like Groundhog Day every 2 years when we kind of go through this to some degree. And I was talking to some of the coaches, out there this morning, and for them, they feel the same way, because for some of them, there are no surprises, and they had a lot of their non-district play pretty much lined up, ready to go. And when the districts drop, I mean, there's no shock. And for some of them, it is very much a, I show up, smile, shake some hands, and head back. And maybe for a handful, it's a lot more chaotic. Jason Todd for South Oak Cliff was a bit confused by the district setup, and he was scrambling around, and he told me he's still not sure what that district's going to look like by day's end, because he wasn't sure if there was an oversight in their district and that a certain team wasn't supposed to be in there or not, because he thought Spruce was opting up. So to your point, I mean, since there's so much change, I do agree that it is good that they do this every 2 years. And find some resolution. And listen, we could be back here in 2 years, and DeSoto decides maybe we go back to 6A, depending on what the enrollment numbers are. And so, at least it gives them a shot, to go down classification for the first time in, was it since '84?
Yeah.
So
yeah, going back to '84,
42 years. It'll be notable to see just maybe how dominant DeSoto becomes across all athletics this year.
Yeah, point of order, Jonah. By the way, I don't know, because we've been so steeped in this, I don't know how much you've been, thinking about things in terms of meteorology and the like and the such. Today does happen to be Groundhog Day, so your reference is absolutely spot on. Puxatawny Phil, I don't know if he saw a shadow or not, but today is Groundhog Day.
That's great. I actually didn't know that, so that's perfect.
He did see a shadow, I'm just told. So unfortunately, that means 6 more weeks of winter.
Yes,
and that's the last thing we want to hear around here, although the next week or so should be great.
I think we'll be fine down here. The folks in Pennsylvania may have a different thought on things.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mentioned earlier, I've talked with Claude Mathis about this a lot over the course of the last 2 years. Talked with him about it just 6-8 months into the first time they made the decision in 2024 to stay in 6A. Again, they were the 2-time defending state champs in 6A D2 at that time when they were making this call. And even 6 months in, not having been yet upset by Longview in the regional final, not having been in any sort of trouble whatsoever from a football perspective, he was already sounding like, he didn't say it exactly this way, but he sounded like he regretted the decision at least a little bit. Not relative to football, relative to every other sport. I think if he could split the baby and leave his football program in 6A, and let all of the other programs play 5A D1, I think he would do that in a heartbeat. That's not the way things work. That's not an option. So I think this time around, he knew pretty early on, I need to do what's right by all of our student athletes and make the decision to go down to 5A Division I. I talked with him again this past year, and listen, they went back and won 6A D2 again for a third time in 4 years, so it's clearly not that they can't compete, but he did say this year, as they're now in the second year, kind of third year, as the numbers have been dropping off at DeSoto High School, he has felt, especially this season, those numbers start to drop. He said, we played more kids both ways this year than we've ever had to do in his entire time, both stints where he has been at DeSoto, both pre-going to the college game and then coming back, his time at Marshall High. Anytime he's been at DeSoto, they've never had to play as many kids both ways as they did this year. Still was able to go win a state championship, but it was a lot harder this time around. And again, I think it was about the girls' basketball team and the track program and the soccer team and all of these programs that very well could be state championship contenders at the 6A level, just that much more so now at 5A D1 over the course of the next 2 years. And it seems like, anyway, the way that the demographics are going in DeSoto and the way that that school district is changing, I think we've seen the last of DeSoto as a 6A program, unless something pretty drastically changes. Jonah, I know you talked with Claude Mathis a little bit today about all of this, but also about the Duncanville of it all, because that rivalry has been so good over the course of the last 5 or 6 years. That will continue, and Claude Mathis talked about that a little bit this morning.
Different. Very different. So used to 6A, and like I said, I tossed and turned last night because I'm not used to it, but it's going to be very different for us. I know, we still kept Duncanville, though, but the District of Doom is no longer right now, so we're going to 5A.
Yeah, what's your reaction seeing that? I mean, that's been an institution in Texas high school football, that District of Doom.
It is. The good thing about it is we kept Cedar Hill in there. Tradition, our rivalry is going to be in there. Lancaster moved to our district as well. So we still have some teams from the District of Doom that are still going to be in another district with us, but just going 5A is going to be a little different for us.
How's your schedule going to shake out any different now?
Well, you know what? I have Allen week 2, Duncanville week 3, so we ain't running from nobody. We're still going to try to play a 6A schedule in, but it's good for our kids, man. I think it's good for all the other sports in DeSoto, so it'll be great.
How many of these have you been a part of?
Wow. Since I've been in DeSoto, since 2008, so maybe 6, 8, I don't know.
What was your reaction the first time you attended one of these?
Different. I was like, wow, I didn't know that. I think it was my first time here, and I didn't know that many people were going to be here. And that was my first time ever attending something like this. But it's crazy. You get to see a lot of people. It's like a family reunion. But everybody trying to find schedules and trying to play somebody to play, so it's a little bit different.
Appreciate it, Claude. Thanks.
Thank you, always. Thank you.
Well, it is what it is. I think it's a new District of Doom. You know, we're now in with North Crowley, Waxahachie, so it doesn't get easier. You know, good teams in every district. It's going to be a challenge.
How many of these have you been a part of?
Shoot, about 35. A lot.
Do you remember your first one?
Not at all. That's a good question. Not at all. I mean, you know, you get so worked up for them that after a point, they all just kind of get bundled together. Because, I mean, again, you're never ready for what's going to show up on the board.
How's your non-district schedule going to shake
Well,
out?
that's a good point. We got one. We're completely full, especially with DeSoto and Cedar Hill dropping down. Those are great rivalries, so we're going to keep those games.
So there you heard from both Claude Mathis as well as Reginald Samples, the head coach at Duncanville. Mathis talked about how the District of Doom was going away, kind of, because they're not a part of it anymore, but it does still persist in a way because take DeSoto out, throw North Crowley in, and that makes things very, very interesting going forward for these teams. Reginald Samples said he's been a part of 35 of these. His math may be a bit fuzzy because that would mean he's been doing them since he was 4. They do them every 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. Coach, you're not 90.
I did like that, he shared our feeling of that this is like Groundhog Day, that they all jumbled together. They all kind of feel the same to him.
Really, really do. But this one is different just relative to the way that the District of Doom now shakes out because it is still loaded. 11-6A, Duncanville, North Crowley, Waxahachie, Red Oaks had a really good 5A program the last couple of years. They're jumping up. Crowley in there as well. They've been kind of climbing of late, I would say. They gave Galena Park North Shore a really tough game a couple of seasons ago. They've got a program that's pointed in a good direction as well. And Mansfield Lake Ridge has had a good program that's kind of toggled between 5A and 6A over the course of the last decade as well. So that is a very deep and difficult district that whoever comes out of that as the 4 playoff teams, you certainly think Duncanville and North Crowley will be 2 of the 4. And if it is those two would be very likely your 6A D1 teams. Although, actually, now that I say that, I'm not sure where Waxahachie and North Crowley fell enrollment-wise. That would be interesting if North Crowley were to toggle to 6A D2. That would be dangerous.
Yeah.
And then, goodness gracious, that is a hodgepodge of really good football teams that are probably battling for 4th place in the final playoff spot. Good luck if you are in District 11-6A over the course of the next 2 years, fellas.
And my good friend Reginald Samples, one other point about that, he also kind of illustrated to us just how interconnected and how crazy and how much minutia is involved with all the puzzle pieces when this day happens. Because normally, and you guys know this, he has had an absolute bear of a time trying to find non-district scheduling.
Nobody wants to play.
Right, nobody wants to play them, but now because DeSoto and Cedar Hill both went down, and they want to keep those rivalries intact, everyone wants to see those games, especially everyone who lives in those areas. So he's full, and that is something you do not hear Duncanville saying very often, that the non-district schedule is full on realignment day. It just doesn't happen. But with the changes that we're having in the other districts, That's how it works out. And that's what these coaches have to be prepared for, is it's like a turnover. It's sudden change for them, because as soon as it pops up on the board, that changes and really makes new how they have to go about making their schedule. Now, luckily for Coach, they knew about the numbers, and this was just a confirmation in terms of, the fact that DeSoto was going to play down and not up. But I'm sure he talked to Claude Mathis before and probably knew that as Claude was going through his decision-making process. Yes. But that is a good example of why this day is so important, and it means so much to these coaches. And like Coach mentioned, both of those coaches, who are two of the best Texas high school football coaches in our state, and they both said, man, there's a little anxiousness getting ready for this day, and that's just what goes into it, because there is so much change and upheaval that can happen.
Jonah, I don't know if you saw, because he mentioned they're going to keep DeSoto and Cedar Hill, so there's 2. They are in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-team district, so they need 3 non-district games. I would assume, but he didn't specify in that soundbite, and I haven't talked to him yet personally this morning, that the 3rd game would be South Oak Cliff, that they would keep that non-district game as well to round out their 10-game schedule. But they haven't had a 10-game schedule in years now. COVID was part of that on the front end, but then I think Samp was kind of thinking, I don't hate this. Guys are fresher. It did bite them at the beginning of this season when they lost to Waxahachie, and everybody went, whoa, what on earth happened? But then we all came to find out Waxahachie was really, really stinking good themselves this year. But that was a factor in them being upset by Waxahachie. They were playing their 2nd game of the year. Waxahachie was on game number 4. Early on in the season, it sometimes does matter. This year, it seems like anyway, if they keep South Oak Cliff as well, and Joe, it looks like maybe you're pulling something up right now. Have you already found it?
I'm looking.
I would assume, I'm not certain, but I would certainly assume that would be the game plan, is to keep each of those 3 and then round out a full 10-game schedule for the first time in a while for Duncanville.
Yeah, I think for South Oak Cliff, I mean, from what I was hearing from head coach Jason Todd, I mean, they were trying to get their schedule figured out, because at the time of our conversation, he was still not quite sure how it was going to shake out, because I think they had 9 in their district, but he wasn't sure if they were going to bring someone in to make it 10, or then they would have to split, and then they would have to add a whole bunch of non-district games, or if it was going to be 8, and then it would keep it kind of how I think they had originally planned, because they've got a bunch of non-district matchups tentatively set, including I think it's South Lake in week 3, but that might get crossed off the schedule now based on how many teams are in their district. So South Oak Cliff and South Lake are having a conversation today, figuring that part out. We'll probably know by day's end how that schedule is going to shake out, unless it already has between the last couple of hours since our chat. So a lot of moving pieces still for some of these teams, even after the districts are revealed. One more note, though, about North Crowley. So North Crowley going into, I guess it's the renewed District of Doom. I don't know if it
changes every 2 years.
We might have to come up with a new name for it, just because I feel like that's disrespectful to DeSoto, because the DeSoto Duncanville, I mean, that was really, that gave it its chutzpah. But if we put in North Crowley there, and assuming they continue to, blossom as a program, obviously, what they did 2 years ago with that undefeated season is going to be remembered forever. But now with the new head coach and DeMarcus Harris, there's questions on what are they going to look like without Ray Gates at the helm. And so assuming that program still continues to trend the way it has over the last few years, I mean, that makes for a real spicy new rivalry that we could be seeing in 6A between Duncanville and NC. So I'm excited for that. It doesn't have necessarily the history and tradition of DeSoto Duncanville, but getting to see North Crowley and Duncanville will certainly be fun, and not having to wait to playoffs to see it.
Yeah, and they're bringing in John Meredith, the corner from Euless Trinity, that's the top player in the country in the senior class. So I think North Crowley's probably going to be fine. To that end, Jonah, before we move too far away from North Crowley, because I know you talked with DeMarcus Harris this morning, let's hear what the new North Crowley head coach had to say as he begins the process of taking over for Ray Gates.
Oh, man, it's awesome. Our kids have been talking about, getting in a tougher district and having to load it up every week. We know if we're doing what we're supposed to do, we got to see Duncanville anyway, and now we get a chance to see them in district.
When you saw, what your district ended up being, your initial reaction was what?
Let's go. We're already working at that level. We feel like we're one of the top teams anyway. So, man, we want to play the best. I mean, we got North Forney, we got South Lake, and then we're trying to play Aledo. So we're not really ducking anybody.
I was going to ask, like, what's your non-district schedule looking like?
So right now we're trying to find a week 3, but if we can get some stuff moved around with North Forney and another school, we're going to play Aledo week 1, play South Lake week 2, and then play North Forney week 3, if we can get it worked out.
What's been the hardest part about becoming head coach, no longer just DC?
Not really getting to do as much football as I used to. That's been the hardest thing.
Welcome to managing, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so maybe we can call it a Doom 2.0. That might not be factually correct, right? But for branding purposes.
At this point, it's like Doom 9.3.
Yeah,
like we've done this so many times.
Yes, but for this one, yeah, Doom 2.0. Since DeSoto is no longer one of the key players. But I did find the information about Duncanville, and you guys are going to love this.
Oh, I remember.
Duncanville will play Allen
Yeah.
in their non-district schedule.
That's
so
the
that's going to
opener.
be fantastic.
Yeah, that's the
yes,
opener on like August
that's right.
29th, I think, something like that. That one, I can't believe I forgot about that one because they publicized that one like 3 months ago that they were going to play. So yeah, that is a little unfortunate that Duncanville and SOC aren't going to play because that was always fun to see Jason Todd and Reginald Samples go head to head, kind of the teacher and the pupil.
That's
but yeah, Duncanville, Allen.
And the other thing about that, always, and the other thing about that is Allen's non-district schedule is going to be ridiculous. Duncanville, DeSoto, and South Lake Carroll. I had one Allen fan share with me earlier. They might be in hot water. I'm not saying that. I'm just that was shared with me from an Allen fan. So I'm just saying, should be fun to watch.
Yeah, no, that matchup will be fantastic. Each of those matchups will be fantastic. And frankly, for Allen, because they will be, let me pull this up real quick and make sure I'm giving you this correct. They'll be in District 6A with Dallas Jesuit, McKinney Boyd, Princeton, Prosper Rock Hill, and Prosper Walnut Grove. So that will not be an easy district either. Prosper and Prosper Walnut Grove, very, very good programs. Walnut Grove has been exploding in population over the course of the last couple of years and was a terrific 5A D2 program each of the last 2 years. They jumped from 5A D2 all the way up to 6A. That game, Prosper Walnut Grove, will be fun, let alone those two teams playing against Allen. McKinney's always got a good program. Dallas Jesuit's always got a good program. Allen's schedule, good luck. But they're kind of almost back. They were really good this past year. So it will not surprise me at all if they win 7 or 8 of those 10 games, probably. Like, they'll still be a playoff team. And shoot, if you go 7-3 against that schedule, that's fantastic. That's how difficult that schedule is.
This is one thing I love about some high school football in our area is that a lot of these top-tier teams play other top-tier teams early in the season. And it's not always like that in other sports, in other states, in other regions.
College football.
College football. I'm going to run away as fast as possible from good competition. I love that we get it in our area because it's almost like getting high school bowl games, early in the year, and you kind of see where they stack up. And the coaches, they tell us every year, and the reason being is it gives you a chance to see good competition early in the year, see where you need to be as a team, later in the season, especially the playoffs. And gives you those types of playoff-type games before you start district competition. I just love that we get to see some of those matchups. You might have seen the soundbite there with North Crowley's new head coach, DeMarcus Harris. They're looking at Aledo week 1 against North Crowley, which would be another fantastic matchup.
Let's go.
Right after our
Can we get to August right now?
I know, right? Right after our Q&A. Coach Harris of North Crowley and Aledo's head coach were chatting and trading phone numbers because DeMarcus Harris is the new head coach. Ray Gates was the previous one. They had to trade numbers so they could stay in touch and figure out the logistics of if that's going to happen week 1, which it sounds like they want to make work.
That's fantastic, you guys.
That's awesome.
That's why, man. That's why this day is so much fun too. Because I don't know about you guys, I'm already getting hyped up, right? Thinking about some of the matchups And then the interconnectivity of all this, like, because think about, you brought up Prosper Walnut Grove, because we were talking about Allen. And think about the district that they come from, that 5A district of Doom, with Melissa and Anna, and how that has kind of been broken up. But now we get to see what happens when that team plays up. Because, listen, especially Prosper Walnut Grove, in very short order, they have put together a serious football program. They have only been on the scene on the varsity level for a handful of years, and they showed very quickly how good they can be. And now let's see what happens, when it gets ratcheted up a little bit. And I do think that's a really interesting district, especially because you've got Dallas Jesuit in there with Allen, McKinney schools, Prosper schools. Just it's a big span when you include Dallas Jesuit in there, getting just south of 635, and then you have all those other schools that are kind of on the north side of town. So that will be a district to watch, especially with Allen, Prosper, and as we said, trying to find out what Prosper Walnut will do. That one will be a fun one to watch.
Yeah.
Prosper
Agreed.
Walnut Grove, what they've done in an insanely short period of time, because the past 2 seasons where we have seen them burst on the scene and become a statewide player at the 5AD2 level, they did in their first 2 years as a full-blooded UIL districted program. They played an outlaw schedule in 2023-2024. That was their first year as a varsity program, played 10 non-district games, didn't have a ton of success, frankly, that year. And then year 1 in a district, they go 11-2 and win a district title. And then year 2, they go 12-1, go undefeated in district and win another district title. Hayes Hackney, their quarterback, Cameron Newton, their running back. Yes, that really is his name. Were obviously big parts of why, and Newton is now gone. He's graduating. They'll have Hayes Hackney back, though. He'll only be a junior next year. That's how young and talented that young man is. Here is a look at District 6-6A, the one we're talking about. Allen will certainly, I think, be the preseason favorite to win this district, but it is going to be an absolute war between Allen, certainly Prosper, just like, oh my goodness, the Allen-Prosper game last year was theater. Prosper Walnut Grove in that mix as well. Rock Hill has been interesting the last couple of years. They've had some moments where they've had a really good team. Another very new high school that has done some good things out of the gates. Princeton was pretty solid last year as well. And the 2 McKinney schools have both had moments in the last, they weren't as great last year, but they've had moments just in the last 5-6 years where they've had a really strong program. So they're as liable as anybody to bounce back up themselves as well. That is a very tough district that everybody in that grouping is going to be battling for those 4 playoff spots all season long. That's going to be very, very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, Walnut Grove, the enrollment numbers are just crazy. I mean, the growth that they've had there is absolutely nuts. And for those who have actually been out to the campus and the high school, I mean, it is a behemoth. Yeah, I mean, you can get lost just, in the parking lot. But it's really cool to see a program almost like an expansion team just kind of pop up, and we're going to be competitive. And we're going to be competitive for playoffs. It's neat to see. Hackney transferred to, was it Argyle, right? Walnut Grove's quarterback transferred to Argyle. And then another note about Argyle
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Did he really?
Yeah, transferred to
When
Argyle.
When did that happen?
I guess recently. This is a breaking news report coming in from our
6 days ago.
6 days ago. Yeah.
I had missed that.
Well,
Wow, that is huge.
Our resident high school expert, Paul Melton, is watching our stream right now, and
the best
had to send in some notes. One other note about Argyle: Argyle scheduled a California team to host Week 1, and the head coach of Argyle, Todd Rogers, left Birdville this morning, needing a Week 3 opponent. So this is kind of goes back to what I said about 20 minutes ago, is that some of these coaches show up, shake hands, they're on their way, and it's not a big deal. Some coaches leave still needing opponents because of just how districts shake out, and their schedule is still a bit chaotic. So Argyle's still trying to figure some things out here on this on realignment day.
Buddy, you could knock me over with a feather on that Hayes Hackney news. I had not seen that yet, and that is massive.
It is significant. But again, are we all that? I'm not going to say we're not surprised, because we have seen a lot of really elite players transfer kind of over this cycle. It is going to be curious how much this impacts Walnut Grove's, program. Can they replace him? Do they have somebody next man up? They clearly have the enrollment of a program that should add depth. But do they have the development at the local level? Do they have somebody coming in? We will find out, obviously, as we get into spring and summer.
I can't believe I hadn't seen that. That is wild and changes a whole lot for both of those programs. Let's go back to 6A for a moment, because there's a change, and Joe, you talked about this off the top of the show. Frisco Wakeland. Frisco ISD has grown massively, obviously, over the course of the last 2 decades, adding high schools every year or two, sometimes adding 2 in 1 year. And a lot of it has been through the somewhat unspoken auspices of, hey, let's keep everybody in 5A, and sometimes they'll flat out tell you that was kind of the methodology. Mm-hmm. Frisco Wakeland ends up in 6A this go around. They end up just north of that cutoff, and they end up in 5, 6A as a result. Denton Braswell, Denton Geyer obviously always a terrific program. Louisville and Flower Mound and Hebron and Marcus, all teams that have won great rivalries with each other and kind of toggle between who's going to be the big dog in that grouping every year. Louisville the last couple of years has been very, very strong, and then Little Elm in that district as well. Joe, you teased this off the top. What has been the reaction there in Frisco about the fact that this was, I kind of put air quotes on this, allowed to happen? How has the city of Frisco reacted to all this?
Yeah, first and foremost, you got to know the subtext and the backstory behind part of the exponential growth here in Frisco. And part of the reason, and you mentioned it, Mike, it was publicly spoken, right? I go back to Mayor Masso, the former mayor of Frisco. Part of the way that he wanted to build this city was using the student opportunity model. Mm-hmm. And in the last 20 years, they built 10 new high schools, bringing the total to 12. And that was absolutely by design, because it's the anti-Allen model. Mm-hmm. Instead of having that one school with that, all that talent going to one place, they wanted to dilute the talent pool because they wanted to make it what they call a better student experience, right? Instead of having one starting quarterback for the entire city, you got 12, right? And that filters through to band with first seats and head cheerleaders and everything. And that's kind of the thought process behind why they tried to keep these enrollments down and why they tried to keep these schools at the 5A level. It was all about that, and being business first that really led to the boom here in Frisco. And that's why there have been people critical, parents have been critical of this move, but especially because the school was so close to the cutoff line. I mean, it was, 40, 50 students within the cutoff line, maybe even less than that. So that's why there have been a lot of people who have been critical of the move, and they just wondered why the lines weren't redrawn to keep intact that student opportunity model and keep them in 5A. Now, I will say this, a lot of that was when there was a possibility of having to take on, the Allens of the world and possibly having to go up against a school that has an enrollment 2.5 or 3 times larger. Yeah. With where they ended up, I don't know how much that will allay, some of the negative reactions that have happened. But I suspect, and again, I don't have a crystal ball, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Frisco doesn't figure out a way to make sure that Wakeland ends up being back in 5A in 2 years. And again, hence why I am back on board with this evolution model in terms of this, biennial realignment every other year, because sometimes you just don't get it right. And when you look at some of the way the lines, the zoning lines have been drawn here in Frisco, listen, I'm not going to say that Frisco ISD didn't get it right. That is not my place. And there are so many, variables that go into trying to get this thing right. I'm not going to cast any aspersions, but I will say this. I wouldn't be surprised at all if in 2 years that Wakeland's back in 5A.
It does kind of work out to almost look like a gerrymandered map with the way that they try and change these things around but I do wonder how much of this, for the folks at Frisco ISD that are the ones that are responsible for how these things play out, if you start redrawing the lines too much, then you end up getting kids that between what, sophomore and junior year of high school, end up having to flip-flop from one school to another. Like, that is upheaval in its own way. And I can understand not wanting to do too much of that as well. And I think a lot of what you talked about in terms of what the goals were for Frisco ISD when they set all this out, to have 12 starting quarterbacks, to have 12 first chairs, to have 24 starting wide receivers, whatever the case may be, you do still have all of those things. All of that does still exist. The fact that one of these programs is going to have to play tougher competition, okay, it will make these next 2 years harder for Frisco Wakeland. They've got a good enough program. They've been good enough over the last couple of years. They can certainly be a playoff team out of that district. They've got the opportunity to go contend and be a playoff team in that district. So a lot of the things that were planned, that were laid out in this way at Frisco, that are, like you said, the anti-Allen model, the anti-probably Aledo model, Aledo, another one town, one high school town, at least at present. Those things are still in place. And I don't think the sky falls because of this. It's different, and it's not what they set out to achieve with all of this, but I don't think it will be the end of the world either. Jonah, I know you were there. You talked with Frisco Wakeland's head coach as well. What was your takeaway from that discussion? And we can play that here in a moment as well. But where do you fall on all this?
This is very politically correct and diplomatic, as expected. I tried to see if what he thought about the politics of it all, and he really wouldn't get into that. Just saying, I'm a football coach. So credit to him for giving me the company line. But yeah, I did catch up with him and ask about the move up to 6A, just because this is unprecedented for a Frisco ISD school.
Yeah, let's give a listen to what he had to say today.
I don't know if it's scratch your head, because the UIL has always got a couple surprises in store for you, so you just kind of go into it expecting that. But the exciting part is being able to play some new folks and being able to have a different district to be a part of, and see some new faces and kind of branch out, and then the opportunity for our kids to play at the 6A level. It's just a new opportunity for them. And just the great things that we're doing at Frisco ISD has nothing to do with whether you're 5A or 6A. Our kids are going to be ready and they're going to compete. But I'm not sure anybody could have anticipated the drop by 60 for the classifications across the state. Just the enrollments are declining somewhat. I don't think anybody could have anticipated that. But that's just where we are, and just us being 6A now, it's just a little bit different. We'll be playing some different people, but it's still exciting at the same time.
The last point that Chan Isom made there is absolutely important context to all of this. The folks at Frisco ISD, the folks at any school district that are trying to play this game and have enough high schools so that they don't end up as a 6A program, it's a moving target. It's not the same number every 2 years. It is based on the demographics across the entirety of the state. So that number floats up and down periodically depending on how many students there are across the state and what those numbers break down to be, because what they're trying to do is create relatively even chunks in 6A, in 5A, in 4A, and split up all of the thousands of high schools that there are across the state. It's not a hard and fast number where the folks at Frisco ISD can know going into it, all right, if we keep everybody under 2265, we're good. You think it's 2265, and then, oh shoot, it's 2214. Or it can change, and even just that little bit, when you're trying to do this across 12 different schools and you're playing this balancing act and you're trying to take some out of this cup and pour it in that cup, like, it's not easy to do. So it's understandable that it worked out this way. And I do think that the end result for Frisco Wakeland of getting to go play somebody else, they get to go play at C.H. Collins in Denton against Denton Guyer and Denton Braswell. And it's not 8 consecutive games against other Frisco schools where you're just playing at the Star and at Kirkendall and at Toyota Stadium over and over and over again. It is some variance. I can see how that will be fun for Chan Isom's program to just get outside of their bubble for a little while and go play somebody else.
Yeah, it's especially fun because they dodge being in a district with Allen. I will make that point because I think it's salient. But you're right, Mike, and that's what I was alluding to with the statistical equation that you have to try and figure out, because part of it is, and listen, I do think Frisco ISD and everyone across the state knew that that number was coming down a little bit.
Sure.
But you also, when you're drawing those districts, you can't go too far below it because of all the kids you have in the district.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just and that's why I would never cast aspersions. It's just too hard of a query to try and make it all work out, and sometimes it doesn't. But I wonder what kind of safeguards will be put in place for the next couple of years. And if y'all don't mind, if we could stay in Frisco for a minute, because we've got more interconnectivity with some of the stuff that we've been talking about before, because we mentioned that 5A District of Doom with one of those teams being Melissa. Now Melissa is in a Frisco heavy district.
That's a really fun district.
I mean, this should be a really cool district with the teams that are in here. And I'm talking about 5A Division I, 5A Division I.
Yeah.
We're talking about Frisco Lone Star. Of course, they lost in the state championship game a season ago. There's Frisco Heritage, Frisco Centennial, Lebanon Trail, Liberty, Frisco Reedy, McKinney North, and Melissa. So interesting to see, can Melissa come in and be the big dog in Frisco? Because we've seen the growth there. We've seen how well they've played these last few years, especially that Melissa Lovejoy rivalry really got going. That thing was something. Melissa got the best of them last year. But, I mean, now you get to see, hey, what does Melissa have for Frisco? Can they come and, and run some of the Whataburgers right around the corner from my house? Because that's what it's all about here in Frisco. It's like, Wakeland wants to beat Lone Star. Lone Star wants to beat Wakeland so they can have, so they can own the Whataburger that is literally 3 minutes from my front door. So that's what it's all about around here.
And Melissa ending up 5AD1 was a bit of an upset because I think they assumed over the course of the last couple of years that they were going to end up 6A the way that they have boomed over the course of the last couple of years. They end up just under that cut line. So it's a difficult game to play, and it's not that easy for these people for the folks at the ISDs to always be able to necessarily forecast. So yeah, I think the folks that are up in arms in Frisco, a little grace needs to be given because this is not so cut and dry. The other Frisco ISD district in 5AD2 is an interesting one as well because that's where we find Salina. District 4, 5A Division II, Salina bumping up from 4AD1 to 5AD2 this year. Salina not coming off a state championship this time around, but they did win it the year prior. Always a strong program, but obviously a program that is in the midst of a lot, to say the very least, about everything that's going on with that program. And this district looks like it's going to be very, very difficult as well. Frisco High, Frisco Emerson regularly have good programs, and Frisco Panther Creek has been sensational over the course of the last couple of years. Prosper Richland, a brand new program that will be playing as part of a district for the first time around this go-round. There's a lot to like about this district. There's a lot of intrigue within this district, and some really good football that will be played there. It'll be interesting to see how this one shakes out.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what Anna will do as well, Mike.
Yes.
Because we've
Anna's
seen them
fantastic.
continue to grow. They are so fun to watch. I caught 2 of their games in person last year. That program is building. They continue to grow. In fact, I think they're outgrowing their stadium from what I understand. There are plans for a new stadium there. I don't know if that's public yet. May have just broken news there. But they're trying to make it happen. I don't know if all, they haven't taken care of everything, but that's certainly the plan. There are plans in place to try and make that happen. So Anna, growing program in that district, and Panther Creek, man, come on now. They are just on the come. So yeah, it's fun around here in the neighborhood, man. We got so much good football. It's a lot to look forward to. I'm blessed in that regard. I can literally drive 5 minutes in any direction, you guys, and find a dang good high school football program from my front door. It's really fun living here.
Jonah, what do you think about that? Because you're right, Joe. Anna, and that was an oversight on my part to skip past them with my eye line as I was going down the list. Now, they won't have their superstar quarterback, Zy Williams, anymore. Their start of the last 3 years that led him to a state championship in his sophomore year and 2 really strong seasons as they bumped up from 4A to 5A, just a little ahead of Salina making that move over the course of the last 2 years. So they'll have to figure out the quarterback position, but that's a program under Seth Parr that is terrific as well. Jonah, what's your takeaway from that district in terms of how that'll all shake out?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to, some of the other districts that we've talked about. It seems like there's, maybe one team that from our perception, seems like it's a bit better of a program than the others, but you never really know until they get going into district play and see how they actually stack up. And so, yeah, that's a great district. There have been a few, I don't know if there's been any like massive quote unquote surprises today besides, the DeSoto dropping down to 5A, but there are a lot of intriguing districts and the way they're set up that are going to make for a fun couple of years, and we're going to really get to see how some of these programs are put to the test against a better competition.
Yeah, this is one of those days where you could go in 1,000 different directions. We could do a 3-hour show on this and not run out of topics to talk about. We've only got about 5 minutes left to talk about all this before we have to wrap things up because the studio space is spoken for here coming at about 12:58. But I'll give you guys a second to think about this, a second to kind of scan through things as I set this up. What's your one district to look out for most? What's the district that you were looking forward to most in the coming football season? There are so many different choices, and I'm going to kind of filibuster here for about 60 seconds to give you guys a chance to scan and decide up on one, because this is a part of the show that we didn't produce out here right at the very end to wrap things up. But there's so many different options that you could talk about that are fun. Certainly the Aledo of it all, where we started this show, is very interesting just to see, can an Arlington Martin, a program that has been really good at points over the course of the last 20 years, could they challenge Aledo and maybe be the team that would finally snap that long Bearcats winning streak in district play? Could Arlington High, Arlington Bowie be one of those teams? District 6A we talked about earlier, Allen and Dallas Jesuit, McKinney Boyd. There's so much talent in there, the 3 Prosper schools. It's going to be fun to watch the rivalry within that district blossom between Prosper and Prosper Walnut Grove. Big news, at least to me, that I didn't know before we started the show today, that Hayes Hackney is leaving Prosper Walnut Grove. That changes the math there a little bit for that Wildcats program and for Tommy Allison, their head coach. But still, Walnut Grove has been the team that kind of everybody in Prosper's talking about. Look at what they're doing. Look at how they're making this rise. And Prosper's been the established program that has won a state championship in their past, that is a regular state championship contender. And I can imagine those that are wearing green Prosper Eagles gear saying, hang on a second, little brother. We're still the big dogs in town. That rivalry will be fun to watch develop over the course of these next couple of years. Certainly 11-6A, the New Age District of Doom, Duncanville, North Crowley, Mansfield Lake Ridge, Waxahachie, Red Oak, Crowley High. There's so much talent in that district. That one will be an awful lot of fun. Fellas, tell me if I've filibustered for long enough that you guys can jump in here. Is there one that either of you is most excited to see?
I just wanted to see you keep going.
Do I need to start reading recipes like I'm a senator?
That's right. Go to Denny's. Listen, we hit on it, but it's too juicy. I mean, District 11 and 6A is going to be so much fun. It stinks that Duncanville and DeSoto won't play in district play, but getting to see North Crowley, a upstart Waxahachie program, and Duncanville, and a couple of other good programs in there too that are on the come up as well. That's just going to be a really fun district, and it may come down to Duncanville and North Crowley at the end. Who knows? But I think it'll be really fun to see for the next couple of years.
How about you, Joe?
And we mentioned this district when we were talking about Frisco Wakeland playing up in 6A, but 5, 6A, you guys. I'm just curious about the kind of Louisville area schools of it all.
Yeah.
And there's one quarterback at Flower Mound Marcus, Colton Nussmeier.
Yes.
I saw him last year.
The latest Nussmeier.
The latest Nussmeier to come up. Of course, Doug Nussmeier, former Cowboys offensive coordinator. It's his son. His oldest son just played in the Senior Bowl. Of course, he played at LSU. But Colton Nussmeier, you guys, watching him play, he is completely different from his brother. He's taller. He's more athletic. In fact, I'm told he's a great basketball player as well. But when it comes to, the games I went to in person last year and the most intriguing talents I saw, it was Colton Nussmeier, because it was almost like he was this young giraffe trying to get his legs under him and trying to figure it all out, and their arms and legs going everywhere, and you could see the athleticism. and you could see him trying to synthesize things on the fly. But I'm curious to see his impact on that district. And when you add in, the likes of Denton Geyer, and you talk about Frisco Wakeland making the jump, I think that's going to be a fun district to watch, and you got Heapern there still, you got Flower Mound. I mean, 5-6A should be fun to watch.
Yeah, I think the answer is 11-6A, but just to not play repeat on Jonah, I'm going to go 5-5A D1, the Frisco district we were talking about earlier that has Melissa in there as well. Melissa loaded with talent, huge school, building this just massive stadium over the course of the last couple of years. They are a destination program for kids. We've seen that over the course of the last couple of years with kids moving in from out of state to go play at Melissa. Matt Nally's built something there. That program is a monster. And that program against Frisco Lone Star and Trey Wright, who will be a junior next year and is a blossoming superstar at the quarterback position, that battle at the very top of that district is fascinating. Frisco Reedy, always really, really good. That district should be an awful lot of fun. At the very least, those three teams at the top battling for the top dog spot.
Thanks for picking that one, Mike, so I didn't have to be a homer. I appreciate you.
All right, we are out of time, fellas. Thank you so much. Everybody, enjoy the Texas high school football season. We only have to wait 6.5 more months, and we will finally be at that point, ready to kick it off for 2026. Thanks so much for watching WFAA Plus. We will see you this fall on Friday Night Football and Friday Night Football 5th Quarter.